Chapter 506. Bang! The air trembled and two powerful forces clashed in the air. High-pitched shrill cries echoed throughout the air as demonic energy began to envelop the surroundings. Boom! A terrifying shockwave spread out in the air, dispersing the clouds in the air. The two responsible for this were none other than Marquis Corniver and Marquis Ethera, the two most powerful figures around. Facing each other in the sky, a frightening pressure bore down on the demons below. Standing up from my spot, I distanced myself a little. However, just because there was a fight going on at the moment, it didn't mean that I was still in the clear. Despite being high up in the sky, I could feel Marquis Corniver's gaze from above. It was filled with malice and resentment. Understandable though. I was indeed the one who had lured him into a trap. Unfortunately for me, Marquis Corniver wasn't the only one looking at me. Marquis Ethera was also looking at me. Since this was supposed to be a quick operation that wasn't supposed to be known by the other demons, he was most likely going to silence me once the fight was over. Not that I didn't expect this. It doesn't really matter. Placing my hand on the sheath of my sword, I stood still and watched the fight that was happening above. The first part is done. Turning my head, I secretly gazed into the distance. Now all I have to do is wait for the next part. Bang! It was then that I felt a frightening energy coming from the sky. Lifting my head, I realized that the two Marquis-ranked demons had finally begun fighting. Ugh! Their energy caused me to step a couple of steps back. It was so strong that I almost groaned as my internal organs shook from the residual energy released from their attacks. Channeling my mana to stop the shaking, I cursed. Damn it, the difference between ranks and ranks is huge. So, planting my foot on the ground, I took a deep breath and calmed my mind. Not yet. I softly muttered. Cards won't replace magicians. They are taking our jobs. Tyranny. Magic cards are what's going to reverse our progress. Shame on the Demon Hunter Guild or stealing our jobs. Holding on to signs and megaphones, people flocked beneath the Demon Hunter Guild as they started protesting. As this was happening, a black car with tainted black windows quietly drove by. Sitting in the backseat of a car, a girl wearing a black suit stared at the crowd with an impassive look on her face, making it hard for anyone to judge what she was thinking. Taking her eyes away from the people, she muttered. The situation has gotten worse lately. Do you want me to do something about it, young miss? Answering her was the driver of the car. Maxwell, Amanda's assistant. Taking another look at the people protesting beneath the building, Amanda thought for a while before nodding. Yes, get rid of everyone. Her tone was firm. It was about time they did something about the protest. Her decision might result in a backlash to happen against her, but she was prepared for this. If her estimates weren't wrong, more than half of the people protesting there were paid actors hired by the other guilds in order to put more pressure on her and the guild. After the release of the magic cards a couple of months back, they instantly swept the market and sold out on the very first day, which was well above her initial estimate. In fact, even now there was far more demand than supply for the magic cards. It had gotten to the point where she had to purchase a couple of more processing plants to make them. That said, not all was positive. With the success of the magic cards, a lot of new problems started to arise. One of them was the massive flood of complaints and protests coming from magicians who found the cards a threat to their profession. Amanda did reassure them that magic cards could never replace magicians, but in the end, it only served to anger them even more, leaving Amanda helpless. To make matters worse, the other diamond-graded guilds also found the newfound success of the magic cards a serious threat to them, resulting in them becoming even more brazen when trying to put pressure on her guild. With news of her father's disappearance becoming more and more of a reality, they started to openly suppress the Demon Hunter Guild. Just the thought caused Amanda to clench her fist tightly. Fine. She ended up muttering underneath her breath. Amanda wasn't the type of person that let something like this happen. Since they were looking out for her blood, she decided to finally make her move. It took her a bit to plan everything out, but with all of the money she recently gained from the magic cards, Amanda was confident in her chances of dealing with the other diamond-graded guilds. Not only that, she had already expected such a situation to arise from the moment she released the magic cards. The situation looked helpless for her, but it really wasn't. Young miss, we're here. Snapping out of her thoughts, Amanda looked outside the car window. It was then that she realized she was inside the parking garage of the guild. Brushing her hair behind her ear, she opened the car door and got out. She then proceeded to head for the elevator in the distance. The calm sound of her heels hitting the ground echoed throughout the parking lot. Following her from behind was Maxwell. Maxwell? Amanda called out. Yes. Halting her footsteps in front of the elevator and pressing the button, Amanda's voice became icy. How are the preparations for the things I've requested? They are already done. I see. Ding. A low chime sounded and the elevator door opened. Taking a step forward, she entered the elevator. With her back still against Maxwell, Amanda muttered. Proceed with everything that was planned. Make sure there are no mistakes. Opening his mouth, Maxwell eventually nodded his head. Understood. His eyes began to squint. In the meantime, the elevator door started to close. You understand what the consequences of your actions will bring, right, young miss? I do. Amanda softly replied. Her tone was very chilly. But I don't care. Seems like people have forgotten just how scary the #1 guild in the human domain is. It's time we show them what happens when they provoke us. A satisfied smile formed on Maxwell's face. Understood, young Mississippi. I will carry out your orders immediately. Good. Amanda nodded her head in satisfaction. Starting from today onwards, a couple of diamond-graded guilds will cease to exist. Turning his wrist to glance at his watch, Maxwell suddenly recalled something. That's right, young miss, I forgot to mention this, but Melissa has scheduled an appointment for later on today. Melissa? Turning around, surprise flashed across Amanda's face. She eventually nodded her head. All right, once she comes, send her to my office directly. Ding. Right as her words faded, another chime sounded and the elevator doors opened. Taking another step, Amanda got out of the elevator. Her elegant figure quickly attracted the attention of everyone that was waiting outside the door. This should be the place. Lowering and raising his head to make sure that he wasn't in the wrong place, Han Yufei looked at the large warehouse in the distance. Scratching the back of his head, he put his phone away and walked toward the entrance of the warehouse. It took him a while to convince the elders to let him join Ren's team, and it took him even longer for him to make them agree on the trade he and Ren talked about. Well, that part wasn't actually too hard. From the moment that he mentioned that he was going to trade the family art with another 5-star technique, all the elders stopped talking. Why was I even worried? Han Yufei could still recall their sparkling eyes to this day. He shook his head at the thought. It seemed as though he had overthought things. Stopping in front of the door of the warehouse, he glanced around the place. On the outside, the place didn't look like anything special as there were only a couple of flowers carelessly put out as decoration. But Han Yufei wasn't one to be fooled by outer appearance, as his eyes soon paused on the doorbell of the warehouse. The most up-to-date NOV are published under freelworld.com. Taking a deep breath to calm his nerves, he eventually pressed the doorbell. All right, here goes nothing. Ding-dong. Bang. As time passed and the fight between the two marquee-ranked demons continued, it wasn't long before one side started to gain the upper hand. As this was an ambush, it quickly became clear as to who held the upper hand in the exchanges. It was Marquis Aethera. With more forces at his disposal than compared to Marquis Cornivus, the momentum of the battle was starting to shift in his direction. It's over. But after taking another closer look, I realized that the fight was already over. Bang. Another powerful blast reverberated throughout the air as a black body shot down on the ground, resulting in an enormous crater appearing on the ground. Masking my vision was a small and dense cloud of dust. Once the dust disappeared and I managed to get a good look at what was going on, I started to get ready. Give it up, Marquis Cornivos. You're finished. A haughty voice rang in the air. With a smirk on his face, Marquis Aethera looked down on Marquis Cornivos as he struggled to get up from the crater. Despite having won the fight, Marquis Aethera didn't exactly come out unscathed. A part of his right wing was torn and blood leaked out from his mouth. Beating a marquee-ranked demon wasn't something someone of the same rank could do so easily. Ugh. Letting out a low groan, Marquis Corniver turned around to look at how the situation with the other demons was. It didn't take too long for him to understand they had lost. Lifting his head, he glared at the sky. You know the consequences of your actions, right? Consequences? Marquis Aethera laughed out loud. What do you think we've spent so much time preparing for? We've sealed the whole area and have killed everyone you brought along with you. No one will find out anything. Yo. Die. Before Marquis Cornevos could reply, Marquis Aethera raised his hand and shot a powerful energy his way. Boom. What followed the attack was a thunderous explosion that destroyed the nearby vegetation and some of the demons that were standing nearby. Fortunately for me, I was quite far from the location of where the energy blast was, therefore I came out unharmed. By the time the sound of the explosion faded and the dust clear, all that remained of the Marquis Cornevos was a small cracked core. You're still alive even after that, huh? Descending down to the ground, Marquis Aethera grabbed the core. The smile on his face twisted even more. Well, it doesn't matter. Crack. Squeezing his hand, the core broke into millions of pieces. Just like that, a Marquis-ranked demon had died. Staring at the scene from a couple of meters away, I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. Looks like it's my turn to move now. Chapter 507. My next set of actions was quick. As I was dealing with a Marquis-ranked demon, every little second mattered. Taking out a stack of magic cards from my dimensional system, I injected them with my mana before throwing them in the air. Swiping my hand, 3 rings formed around the igniting cards. By the time the cards were about to fully ignite, the rings turned red and a small ball of fire resembling a sun was contained in the middle of the rings. Go. With a simple wave, the rings flew toward the sky. What's this? Catching sight of the ball of fire, Marquis Aethera reached his hand out. But it was already too late. Boom. A large cloud of fire bloomed in the air and accompanying it was a thunderous explosion. The fire receded after a couple of seconds, but it served its purpose. Any time now. You. Feeling Marquis Aethera's gaze land on me, I raised my head and stared back at him. Slowly descending to the ground, he looked back at the area where I threw my attack. What were you trying to do? Testing something. You seriously want me to believe that? Raising his head, he smelled the air. His face changed a little. This sensation. I felt his gaze pause on me as he carefully scrutinized my body. After a while, his eyes opened up. You're not a demon. Ah, looks like the cat is out of the bag. In order to make it seem like I was a demon, I had placed a couple of cores inside of my body. By simply creating a thin coating of mana, I stopped the demons from regenerating, and in the process, created an effect that made it seem as though I had demonic energy inside of my body. This was a trick that I learned from my other self. It was quite a useful one at that, as it really helped me out quite a bit. Without it, I would have probably been found out in the first month. Had it not been for my last attack that left some lingering mana in the air, Marquis Aethera would have never found out. A pity. I muttered underneath my breath. I don't know how you. Stopping himself mid-sentence, Marquis Aethera's head snapped toward the distance. It was then that he managed to spot several demons heading his way, coming from the northern side. His face finally changed. This. Staring at him from below, I smiled from behind my mask. It looks like someone noticed all of the commotions you've caused. Not quite. From the moment that I decided to help him out, I knew that he was going to try to silence me. Even if he wasn't, I wasn't still going to go through with my plans. Which were essentially the same as the first one. That is, act as bait and lure them into a trap. With Marquis Aethera now injured, if there was a better time than to get rid of him, it would be now. That said, even if he was injured, he wasn't someone that I could kill. Our rank difference was just too big. I didn't need to kill him myself anyways. And just like I had convinced him to ambush the Greed clan, I presented another clan with a similar situation. From how the Sloth clan was planning on ambushing the Greed clan, and how they could use this opportunity to deal damage to them. The fireball I just threw was a signal for them to move. You actually planned to backstab me from the very beginning. Snapping me out of it, I felt a malicious and terrifying glare directed in my direction. Without needing to look, I already knew who it belonged to. But I didn't care as my attention toward the opposite side, the southern area. This was only half of my plan. They should also be coming soon. But as I looked in the distance and I saw nothing, my forehead started to crease. Did I mismatch my timing? Or did they ignore my words? So, this was going to be troublesome. I suddenly felt a burst of aura coming from behind me. You. Marquis Aethera's voice shook the air and the area around me started to twist. Turning around, I realized that Marquis Aethera was preparing to attack me. Shit. Feeling the terrifying aura that was directed in my direction, I once again turned to look into the distance. Yet again I saw nothing. Activating Eyes of Kronos, I started to assess the situation. The chip inside of my head started to run at full throttle as I tried to figure out my next course of actions. Looks like Plan A is going to be a bust. Do I have no choice but to go with Plan B? You don't. A familiar voice rang from beside me. As usual, it was the other me appearing from out of nowhere. What do you mean? Wait a little bit longer. After a slight pause, his voice became colder. Keep in mind that using that power will only serve to alert Jezebeth of your appearance in the demon realm. You're right. Recalling Jezebeth's power, I became extremely apprehensive. Back then he had only sent a clone to fight me. What if he showed up in his full form? Wouldn't I just die with a simple glance? Just the thought made me extremely apprehensive about using my power. In the midst of my thoughts, the other me continued speaking. Using the skill now will not be ideal. Later on, you might need to tap into that power in order to save Amanda's father. It's best if you save it for then. Not only that, but it's best if fewer demons know about you being a human. If they are made aware of your presence, all clans will start hunting you down. Sure, but the situation doesn't really look too good. You worry too much. Raising his head, he stared into the distance. Unlike me, he could freely move in this slowed-down space. Visit lworld.com for a better reading experience. Give it a couple of more minutes. If something doesn't happen by then, you can go ahead with Plan B. All right. Closing my eyes and deactivating Eyes of Kronos, I raised my head and met Marquis Aethera's eyes. My next set of actions all happened within a fraction of a second. Placing my hand on the sheath of my sword, I activated my sword's effect, and the mana inside of my body started to circulate at a faster rate. At the same time, I activated the one. Because our rank difference was a bit more than one rank, it didn't have too much of an effect on Marquis Aethera as it only worked to distract him for a split second. But it was enough. By the time he recovered from the effect, I had already gathered enough mana. The third movement of the Keiki style. Void Step. Click. My vision distorted and a low clicking sound rang in the air. At the same time my vision started to distort, I saw Marquis Aethera's attack shoot in the direction of where I was previously standing. Boom. Within a split second, it arrived in the area that I was previously standing on. Despite my extreme speed, I was unable to come out unscathed as I ended up crashing against multiple trees, and felt tremendous pain invade every part of my body. Bang. Ugh. That said, I had survived. It hurts. Gritting my teeth, I lifted my body up a little. I had trouble moving as some of my bones were broken, but it was worth the pain. I quickly chugged down a couple of potions. By the time I recovered, the demons in the distance had already arrived and had surrounded Marquis Aethera. Look who we have here. It looks like the information wasn't wrong. A sadistic voice echoed throughout the air as another demon that bore striking resemblance to Marquis Aethera stepped up. I didn't know exactly who he was, but I knew that he was an executive coming from the Gluttony clan. A clan that wasn't on good terms with the Sloth clan, the clan Marquis Aethera came from. Having presented them with an opportunity to deal damage to the Sloth clan, they obviously did not refuse it and secretly sent an adequate force. Wasn't exactly sure they would believe in my plan at first, but it wasn't exactly hard to confirm my words. After I told them that the Sloth clan would make a move against the Greed clan, all they had to do was check for any movement, and from there, they were able to confirm my words. Also, to them, this could be considered a minor conflict. It wasn't anything big. That aside, I didn't doubt that they had set countermeasures in the off chance that this was also a trap, but it didn't concern me. Marquis Action. Marquis Aethera's voice was filled with spite as he said those words. With narrowed eyes, demonic energy rose from his body at an alarming rate. Sink. Just as he was about to speak, Marquis Aethera stopped himself mid-sentence again. His face changed and he looked behind him. Marquis Aethera wasn't the only one that had a change in expression as Marquis Action's face also changed. Similarly, staring into the distance, I smiled in relief. They're here. Reinforcements from the Wrath clan and the Greed clan. Demon Hunter Guild. Inside a large office space, Melissa sat opposite Amanda. What did you want to talk about? Amanda asked in a soft tone. Taking her eyes away from her nails, Melissa adjusted her glasses a bit. She quickly cut to the chase. The central government seems to be planning on regulating the magic cards. Oh. Amanda absent-mindedly nodded her head. Her reaction surprised Melissa quite a bit as she raised her brow and asked, "Are you not surprised?" "Not really." Amanda shook her head. "I already had an idea that this was going to happen. Not only her but so did Ren. Unlike the Union, which dealt with heroes and villains, the central government was another power that primarily focused on keeping order in the human domain. They weren't as powerful as the Union in terms of raw strength, but some might even say that they were more powerful than them, as even the Union could not discard their orders." Melissa leaned back on her chair and crossed her arms. "Since you know, this makes things a lot easier. Do you already have any countermeasures in place?" "Sort of. As in?" "Here you go." Unlocking the drawer next to her, Amanda passed a file to Melissa. Sliding the file her way, Melissa looked through it. Her furrowed brows slowly started to relax. After a while, she put the file back on the table and nodded her head. "This might actually work." Amanda smiled slightly. "I spent a lot of time thinking about it. It will work." There was confidence in her voice as she said those words. She didn't spend her days at the office idly. After learning from the best for the past couple of years, Amanda knew about the political affairs of the world like the back of her hand. A problem like this was not going to faze her. Brushing her hand behind her ear, Amanda's eyes narrowed. If the central government truly wants to put their hands on the magic cards, they should prepare to lose a couple of limbs in the process. "You've changed," Melissa said after a brief moment of silence. A smile crept on her face. "But I like it." Chapter 508. Minutes prior to ambushing the Greed clan, I sent a message to the Wrath clan. In the message, I told them that the Sloth clan and the Gluttony clan were planning on secretly working together to ambush the Greed clan. Although my words sounded sketchy, I provided them with the exact location of where the ambush was going to happen and told them that they knew that they were planning an ambush against someone called the White Death, and that it was all a ruse in order to make the Greed clan act, and use that opportunity to deal damage to them. Since the Wrath clan was allied with the Greed clan, all they had to do was contact them and confirm the information that I told them. Once they were able to confirm my words, the rest was pretty much self-explanatory. While everyone was staring into the distance, I slowly stood up. I should probably take my leave. My plan was pretty much done. If there was a time for me to leave, then it was now. With everyone still confused and startled by the sudden situation, I prepared to use this chance to leave. Taking another look toward the sky, I sighed in relief. That was close. Fortunately for me, the plan somehow worked out. By exploiting the demons' desire to harm each other, I was able to create this scenario. In any case, I had never been too worried about the plan failing. I had 3 more plans prepared just in case this one failed. Not that I wanted it to fail, but I wasn't delusional. I never once thought that my plan couldn't fail. I found myself doubting my plan a lot, but in the end, it seemed as though the demons had been at peace for too long to realize what had happened. Good for me. Masking my presence as much as possible, I quietly left the area and headed toward the Pride clan's territory. My goal here had been achieved. It was time for me to move to the next part. After a while, inside a large forest. How long till we reach our destination? Halting for a bit, I rested my hand by the side of the tree. It had been about half a day since I left the conflict, and by now the sun was already starting to set. Considering that I was under a time constraint, I knew that I could waste as little time as possible. We're almost there. About 2 hours. 2 hours. I groaned. It had to be noted that when he meant 2 hours, it meant 2 hours of me running at full speed. Not only that, but I also had to watch out for the monsters and demons in my way. If anything, that only served to make me even more tired. Hurry up, you don't have much time. Keep going straight. Fine. Recollecting my breath, I once again dashed forward. I can't waste time. I had a goal in mind when acting on the previous plan. Primarily, I wanted to turn the attention of the Pride clan away from their own territory. Although the conflict was a minor one, it was still a conflict. It could serve as a great excuse for the other clans to start conflicts with each other. Try the lworld.com platform _ for the most advanced reading experience. This was exactly what I wanted. Still, I wasn't naive enough to think that they wouldn't notice that I had a hand at play in this conflict. But that was fine. By the time they realized what had happened, I would already have left the demon realm. Hup. Pressing my foot on the ground, I sped up even more. Following the directions given to me by my other self, I continued running for the next 2 hours. To be more precise, it was actually 3 hours as I met a lot of demons and monsters along the way. They weren't looking for me though. Just as I had expected, the fight in the distance had caused enough chaos to attract the attention of the Pride clan. This was exactly what I wanted. You can stop now. Hearing a certain voice, my feet came to a stop. Resting my hands on my knees, I took a couple of deep breaths. Sweat dripped from the side of my face. Are we finally here? Looking around me, the only thing that met my sight were trees. They weren't exactly normal trees though. They were quite tall and their bark was quite dark. Most notable was the fact that the leaves were red as it was nighttime. It was actually quite hard for me to see what was ahead. Furthermore, an eerie silence enveloped the area around me, making it all the creepier. Crunch, crunch. The only noise I heard was the crunching sound of my feet stepping on the ground. Seeing that I couldn't see anything out of the ordinary in the area around me, I turned to look at my other self. Is Amanda's father here? Not quite. He answered. My brows furrowed. What do you mean? We're close, but we will have to stop now. You might not like the sound of my next words. Taking a step back, I instantly felt an ominous premonition. Spit it out. Our eyes met. For a brief moment, I saw my other self's lips curled upwards. It left as fast as it came, and thus I became unsure of whether it was real or not. Did I just imagine that? His next words made me realize that I didn't see wrongly. You're going to fight a demon and lose on purpose. I blinked my eyes a couple of times as I had difficulty trying to process what he was saying. Are you telling me to lose on purpose? And get captured by a demon? Was he crazy or something? Full understanding new disorder on the lworld.com platform. Never mind, he's always been crazy. Why in the world did I forget this? I took a deep breath and sat down on the ground. I then leaned my back against one of the trees. There was definitely more to the plan than he let out. I wasn't planning on dismissing it without properly understanding what he was trying to say. Kindly explain to me your plan. Sure. In a rather calm manner, he started to explain. Raising his hand, he pointed it toward the distance. Not far from here you will find Morian, one of the largest cities in the Pride clan territory. The city is quite big, about the size of Ashton City, and Amanda's father is located there. I see. I scratched the side of my cheek. But how does that have anything to do with me purposely losing to a demon? Let me explain. The other me leaned back on a tree. A small rattling sound accompanied his movement. To put it bluntly, you can't infiltrate Morian. It's impossible unless your strength is equal to a Duke-ranked demon. Is this rank? That hard? Yes. His words surprised me quite a bit. Even if you can make it seem like you have demonic energy inside of your body thanks to the trick that I taught you, it can easily be discovered. It might work when someone isn't paying attention, but once you enter a city filled with demons, you won't make it a couple of steps before everyone finds out that you are an imposter. Right. My brows knit tightly. His words once again made me realize just how dangerous the demon realm was. So far I had only been playing around with the weaker demons on the outskirts of the major cities. My brows soon relaxed and I asked. I get it. But what does that have to do with the fact that I have to lose to a demon? Are you thinking of having me infiltrate the place as a prisoner? But what makes you think the demon won't kill me? You're not exactly wrong. The other me spoke. I won't go on a long speech telling you exactly how the city function, as that would be counterproductive. I will cut straight to the point. If you get caught by a demon, you will not be killed. In fact, they will try their best to keep you alive. Oh. I was once again left surprised by his words. Elaborate. Amichum. The other me nodded. In a way, demons aren't that different from humans or any other race with a shred of intelligence. At one point, all of them seek entertainment. Right. I was slowly starting to get an idea of what he was trying to say. Lowering my head and placing my hand over my mouth, I softly mumbled. Are you saying that my appearance will serve as some form of entertainment for them, hence why they wouldn't kill me but sell me off to make money? Visit lworld.com for a better reading experience. Yes. I see. Once again covering my mouth with my hand, I had a sudden thought. Is that what happened with Amanda's dad? Is he currently inside of that city for the purpose of entertaining the demons? That's right. Like. Taking a couple of steps forward, the other me stopped in front of me. One of the biggest entertainments in Morian is their arena. A place where captives from the other races are made to fight each other, and where Amanda's father is currently residing in. Ah. I let out a small sound. Everything finally started to make sense. In short, in order to reach Amanda's father, I had to purposely lose to a demon so that they would sell me to the arena. Since he said that infiltrating the city was impossible, it seemed like this was the only method that could work. There was only one problem. Since you said that it's impossible to infiltrate the place, what makes you think I can escape from that place? Don't worry about that. The other me reassured. I wouldn't propose something so dangerous without coming up with countermeasures. My eyes squinted. To be honest, over the past 4 months I had seen just how smart and calculative he was. Every one of his plans worked perfectly fine. It may have to do with the fact that he perfectly understood the psychology of the demons, but not once have his plans ever failed. I also didn't doubt that whatever he had planned would end up working out, but I don't trust him. I just couldn't bring myself to trust him. Without fully understanding his intentions, I couldn't bring myself to trust him at all. The only reason why I listened to what he had to say was because I knew that my death wasn't something that was within his interest. It was the only thing that reassured me. You're doubting me? Hearing his words, I snapped out of it. Raising my head and meeting his eyes, which seemed to be devoid of any emotions, I ended up nodding. I don't trust you at all. Good. Good. Let me give you a piece of advice. He suddenly disappeared from his spot before reappearing on top of a tree branch. Always keep your guard up. In this life you might never know who might end up betraying you out of nowhere. Only ever trust yourself. My eyes narrowed. I could tell from the tone of his voice that he was speaking from experience, but despite being the same person, we were fundamentally different. The source of this underfactor. Lworld.com. Etching his words into my mind, I slowly stood up. I'll keep your words in mind. I then turned around and headed deeper into the forest. It was time to get caught by a demon. Chapter 509. Bang. Crashing against a tree was a black humanoid figure. The bark of the tree flew everywhere and the figure rolled back a couple of meters. Coming to a stop, the demon raised his head and glared in my direction. Walk. How dare you? Just answer a few questions if you don't want to die. Walking up to the demon, I placed my foot on top of his head and applied some pressure. His head came into contact with the ground. Cage. Using every ounce of his strength to raise his head, the demon glared my way, but I ignored him and lowered my body to meet his eyes. Along the way, I removed my foot, which was pressed against his face. He was only a Baron-ranked demon. Therefore I wasn't too worried about him running away. Taking out a black frit from my pocket, I presented it to the demon in front of me. I'll give you this if you start speaking. The demon's face changed instantly the moment I took out the core. He was giving me a look filled with greed. I secretly smirked when I saw this. Having killed as many demons as I did, it was inevitable for me to pick up a couple of devil fruits. Since I had no use for them, I could use them as a good bargaining chip. If you want this core, you better answer my questions properly. How should I believe you? The demon's voice was rather calm, but I could tell that this was merely a pretense. It was very subtle, but there was a tremble in his voice as he spoke. He's scared. How should you believe me? I frowned underneath my mask. After a while I just shrugged my shoulders. You don't really have a choice either way. I can just kill you with a single slap. If you don't answer my questions, I'll just go to another demon. Someone will eventually speak. It's not like the questions I'm about to ask are a secret. I slowly raised my hand. The demon flinched when he saw this. I will speak. I will speak. He repeatedly shouted. There was clear fear in his eyes as he said those words. Good. Lowering my hand, I deeply gazed into the demon's eyes. Alright, I'll make this simple. Tell me what you know about Morian. Although what my other self said usually ended up being correct, I still didn't trust him. Before making any moves, I wanted to assess the situation for myself. My next set of actions would be based on the demon's answers. Morian. That's right, tell me anything you know about it. Especially about the arena. The demon's face changed a bit as he hesitated to speak. I pressed my hand to his throat when I saw this. Updated under Lworld.com. I don't have much time, make it quick. Yes. Giving me a fearful nod, he slowly started to recount everything about the city. From its general layout, to who reigned supreme over there and how heavily guarded it was. He also told me which area to avoid and what were the most crowded areas. I didn't really pay too much attention to this information. I wasn't planning on infiltrating the city in the first place. All that interested me was the arena. If you're planning to infiltrate the city, give up on the thought. That place is under the surveillance of 2 dukes. You will never make it past the entrance without getting yourself killed by them. I see. Everything perfectly coincides with what he said. This reassured me a bit. Turning my attention back to the demon, I continued to ask. What about the arena? What do you know about it? The arena? For a brief moment of time, the demon's face changed. It went from a fearful look to one that was filled with excitement. My forehead creased. Before I could say anything, the demon quickly answered. The arena is the biggest entertainment you can find in Morian. It's the best place demons can go to enjoy themselves. Watching the other races fight and kill each other is the most entertaining thing one can watch. Demons from all over the demon realm come to Morian just to watch the fights and place their bets. As he spoke, the demon seemed to have completely forgotten about his predicament as the excitement in his voice only increased. This isn't that much different from fights on Earth. His words reminded me of televised fights back on Earth. Their system was pretty much the same. Most recently, the arena has become an even bigger attraction. There's this new human that has not lost once. Each and every one of his fights a mass. Did you say human? I cut in. I'm sure I didn't hear incorrectly. Could he be referring to Amanda's father? Unaware of what I was thinking, the demon nodded his head. Yes, he's incredibly strong and everyone is already betting on how many matches he has left before he loses. I've personally bet on 30. Even though his fights are impressive, he is slowly getting tired. I don't think he will last that long. Lowering my head a bit, I asked. About this human, what is his strength like? The demon tilted his head. Pondering for a bit, he answered. He should be Marquis rank. Some even say that he's close to Duke rank, but no one really knows. I see. I nodded my head and slowly stood up. It's probably him. The fact that he was human and his strength was similar to that of Amanda's father before he left was a good indication to me that this was most probably the case. Is there anything else you would like to ask me? The demon asked. Turning my attention back to the demon, I thought for a bit before replying. If by chance a demon caught a human, orc, or any other member of the race, what do they earn from handing them to the arena? Full understanding on the lworld.com platform. A strange look appeared on the demon's face as soon as I posed the question, but all it took was a quick glare to stop him from asking unnecessary questions. I was still using the same as before. The one that used course to make it seem as though I was a demon. Due to our rank difference, the demon was unable to see through my disguise. If a demon manages to catch a member from the other race, they can give them to the arena and earn a cut from how much the member performs. Oh, what an interesting system they got here. Instead of having them directly by the people, they have them fight and give them a cut of how much they make along with their stay in the arena. It wasn't a bad deal, especially considering that each event made quite a bit of money for them. Snapping me out of my thoughts was the demon's voice. Lowering my head, I glanced at him. What is it? With a crude smile on his face, the demon asked. I've already told you everything, will you? Click. A subtle clicking sound rang through the air and the demon's face rapidly changed. Why? Ignoring him, I turned around and left the area. Although the demon was unable to mutter his last words, I already knew what he was trying to say. You lied. Yes, I lied. Not that I ever promised him to keep him alive. Walking a bit further away from the area I was previously in, a figure appeared not too far from where I was. So, you satisfied? I am. I gave a short reply. The information he had previously given me may have been right, but I just had to make sure for myself. This wasn't the first time that I had done this, but I just couldn't bring myself to truly trust him. What are you going to do now? He asked after a little bit. Raising my head to meet his eyes, I gave a brief reply. I'll carry on as we've previously discussed. Good. My footsteps suddenly came to a stop. Tapping on my bracelet, I took out a small sphere that was about the size of an ant. I knew that it would eventually come in handy. Taking out all the most important items that I owned from my dimensional space, I put them inside of the small ball, which was another dimensional space. The space that it could store was incomparably smaller than compared to my bracelet, but this was the price one had to pay for such a small dimensional space. Done. Storing all of my most important items inside of the dimensional space, I let out a satisfied smile and proceeded to head toward the city in the distance. The city wasn't actually that far. It was about a 10-minute walk from where I previously was. Throughout the journey, I had to make sure to be extra sneaky as demons and monsters lurked everywhere. Fortunately for me, I didn't do what I did in the past for nothing. With the commotion my previous actions had caused, the perimeter outside of the city was less dense than it should have been. This is a good spot. I stopped right as I was about a couple of kilometers away from the city. I was currently standing on top of a large cliff, and from where I was I could see the city in the distance. Staring at the city in the distance, I felt this weird sense of intimidation coming from it. Not only that, but I could vividly see demonic energy revolve around the city in the form of a black fog. I had a hard time describing the city. It was large. Extremely large. Thick walls the height of a skyscraper covered the whole city, and at the top of the walls I could catch glimpses of demons patrolling the area. The walls were black and I wasn't exactly sure of what they were made of, but they had this strange sense of intimidation that made one feel insignificant. Because the walls were so tall I couldn't quite see what was behind them. However, there was one building I could see, and the pressure that it gave off intimidated me, and that was despite the fact that I was still quite far from the city. The building seemed to be located in the middle of the city, and it appeared to be a large pillar that expanded at the top. That's probably where the Duke-ranked demons reside. Other than that, what could it be? Let's get this done. Letting out a sigh, I looked around me. Then taking out my spare sword, raised it and stabbed myself. Spurt. Blood leaked down on the ground. It hurts. Suppressing the pain, I took a step forward and jumped down the cliff. As I jumped, I made sure to coat my body with a little bit of mana. Thump. Cage. Heavily crashing on the ground, I suppressed my groan once again. Shit. I cursed inside of my mind. Dragging my body with my hand, I stopped right next to a tree. Leaning my back against it, I took heavy breaths and reached out for the white mask on my face. Crack. I broke it into pieces. Dropping one side of the mask beside me, I put the other half on my face. Just enough to make it obvious that I was a human. This should do. It would have been easier if you had just lost to a demon. Just then I heard a voice next to my ear. I'd rather do this. This worked just as well. There was no need for me to pretend to lose to a demon. Just the thought repulsed me. Suit yourself. I will. The source of this Victor. Lworld.com. Leaning my head back against the tree, I exhaled. My injuries were quite severe at the moment, and if not for the fact that I had coated my body with mana before the fall, I would have never survived. Slowly I closed my eyes and pretended to be passed out. Chapter 510. Loud cheers echoed throughout a large arena the size of 2 football stadiums. With seats filled to the brim, a sea of demons excitedly stared toward the center of the arena. Welcome to today's arena games. A seductive voice echoed throughout the whole arena. Following this, an alluring figure appeared in the middle of the stadium. Glossy black hair, a voluptuous figure and deep red eyes. The demoness's appearance brought forth even more cheers from the crowd. Catching a whiff of the bloody scent lingering in the arena, the demoness licked her lips. Now. The demoness smiled. Facing the crowd, she gave them a wink. We're not here for me, but we're here for today's games. I'm sure you're all excited to see what we have in store today. Her words seemed to have instantly calmed the crowd down as the noise dropped to a comfortable level. There was still some noise, but it wasn't as loud as it was before. Thank you. The demoness thanked the crowd. Turning around, she addressed the other side of the arena. For today's event, we have a little surprise for you all. We have found ourselves a new challenger, and he's a human. Her words instantly reignited the vigor in the crowd's faces. Another challenger. A human at that. Does he also have the potential to become an overlord? There is only one overlord. The current overlord is far too strong for anyone to beat. I doubt he will be able to beat him even if he manages to become an emperor-level contender. True, but what if? This is going to be fun. Enjoying the vivaciousness of the crowd, the demoness let the noise continue for a while. She eventually raised her hand and everyone stopped speaking. Thanking them one more time, she continued. I will have to disappoint you all with one piece of news. The challenger will not be participating in the king's bracket, but he will be participating in the duke bracket. The crowd instantly deflated upon hearing her words. In order to ensure fairness in the games of the arena, there were several brackets that classified individuals according to their strengths. The king's bracket was the highest bracket, and it was where ranked individuals fought. The duke bracket was a level lower, and that was where ranked individuals fought. After them there was the count bracket, viscount bracket, and so on. It was a fairly organized system made to ensure fairness. I see that many of you are discussing his potential. Don't be quick to get your hopes up. We still haven't seen him fight yet. Who knows? The demoness paused and stared at the crowd. He might even become the next emperor-level contender. Everyone instantly stopped speaking as they held their breath as soon as they heard her words. Within each bracket there was a ranking. A ranking was gained through beating someone of a higher rank and taking their rank. So if a rank 30 beat a rank 12, the winner would become the new rank 12 while the loser would drop down all the way to rank 30. An emperor-level contender was someone who had reached the number 1 rank in their respective bracket. This meant that they had to be monsters amongst monsters. Only the absolute top could achieve such rank. Can we finally get someone that can overthrow the current emperor? The demoness continued to hype up the crowd with her words. And the results were showing as the crowd started to become even livelier. Seeing how excited the crowd had become, the demoness secretly smirked to herself. Raising her hand, the arena quieted down once more. For more travel, visit lworld.com. You know what? Why stop at emperor rank? What about? Before she could even finish her words, the atmosphere became incredibly tense as all the demons stopped smiling. Overlord rank. The arena instantly erupted into noise. The breathing of some of the demons in the stands started to become more laborious as their eyes sparkled with excitement. How simple-minded, she thought as she looked at the crowd. To be honest, she never believed any of the words she said. What overlord? It was already hard enough for one to become an emperor rank contender. Overlord? A pipe dream. It's simply impossible. For one to become an overlord, they must first become an emperor rank, and that was not something anyone could achieve. That was something achieved by being the best in a bracket filled with thousands of bloodthirsty contenders. How could some random human that appeared out of nowhere achieve such rank? She was merely following the standard script and trying to hype up this new contender. Setting aside the difficulty of becoming an emperor-level contender, the difficulty of becoming an overlord-ranked contender was even higher. There was only one overlord-ranked contender, and it was a role that could only be gained through defeating the currently existing overlord. Someone who had defeated the previous overlord-level contender and had also defeated all of the other emperor-level contenders at the time. To make the fights fair, during the fight between the challenging emperor rank and overlord rank, both contestants would be suppressed to the same rank. That said, despite its fairness, 9 times out of 100 the challenger would always end up losing. They may have the same rank, but the skill gap was just that big. Gazing at the crowd, the demoness' smile became even brighter. I hope he doesn't lose too badly. That said, he should be up against a weak contender, so the chances of him losing should be low. If he lost too badly, it would reflect badly on her as she spent all of this time trying to hype up the crowd. I'll see through this match whether this new contender really has the chance of becoming the new overlord. Enough with the introductions. The demoness suddenly raised her voice and the arena became quiet. Extending her hand toward her right, she continued. On our right, we have a contestant that has come in not too long ago. He's an elf, and is currently ranked 773th in the Duke rank. Please welcome Silver Wing. Following her words, a loud metallic sound reverberated throughout the arena as the tall gates by the end of the arena started to open. Fog. Coming from the other side of the gate was a blonde elf with a rather cold look on his face. His clothes appeared to be worn out and his hair was a mess. Glaring black circled bagged beneath his eyes, and on his right hand was a small wooden staff. As he came out, the cheers coming from the demons intensified. You better win, you fucking elf. I've put all my savings on you. Die, you piece of shit. Ha ha ha. All sorts of insults and slurs were thrown at the elf standing in the middle of the arena. The elf's expression did not change despite this. It was clear that he was already used to the atmosphere. As he walked, he would leave small footprints on the sand-like floor. It looks like everyone is already excited. The demoness smiled brightly as she took her eyes away from the elf. Extending her hand toward the left, she once again raised her voice. The latest series are on undersworld.com website. And finally on our left side. The new contender that I've been talking about and that everyone has heard about. That's right, it's the human that we've recently found and is currently unranked. Please welcome our new contestant. As the new contestant had still not won any matches, he was still not given a name. He could only be referred to by new contestant for the moment. The stadium instantly quieted down. Father. The only sound that echoed throughout the arena was the sound of the gates opening, and it was then that a figure slowly walked out. Snowy white hair, deep blue eyes, and a detached look that made it hard for someone to read his emotions. The moment he stepped into the arena, his very presence caused all of the demons that were about to say something to shut up. All forms of noise ceased. The arena was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. The calm and steady sound of his footsteps echoed throughout the whole arena as everyone's attention was focused on him. His feet soon came to halt. Raising his head, he turned to look at the demoness. He didn't say any words, but his message was clear. Get on with it. Ah. It was only then that the demoness came to her senses. What just happened? She couldn't quite explain what she had felt, but for a brief moment in time, she felt overwhelmed by the presence the contestant gave out. It almost felt suffocating. This was a first for her, and she had presented her fair share of matches. Was this a mistake? Taking another glance at the contestant and no longer feeling the same sensation, the demoness quickly came to that conclusion. It had to be that. She had seen all sorts of experts during her career. Therefore she was quite experienced. She had seen individuals much stronger than the human before her. For her to not have felt as much pressure from them as compared to the human before her, who was much weaker than them, the demoness didn't know what to think. In the end she just decided to not believe it. Coughing slightly, the demoness looked toward her left and right. Directly in the direction of the two contestants. In the meantime, the demons in the stand also recovered from what had happened previously and started to cheer even more loudly. Fight. Kill that elf. Kill that human. I should have bet more money. Seeing that everything was all right, the demoness raised her hand. The arena once again instantly quieted down. Glancing at the crowd, she smiled and lowered her hand. You may fight. Bang. What followed her words was a loud banging sound. It was so fast and unexpected that she was unable to react in time. Try the lworld.com platform for the most advanced reading experience. All she felt was a short breeze that blew her hair and clothes back. By the time the noise faded, the whole arena had quieted down. Weakly turning her head in the direction of where the sound came from, what met the demoness' sight were two deep blue eyes. Ah! She stumbled back one step. It wasn't my imagination. The pressure that she had previously felt wasn't fake. Lowering her head, she gazed at the elf from before. At the moment, his head was smashed against the ground and his figure was unmoving. Whether he was alive or not, she couldn't tell. Gulp. Secretly swallowing a mouthful of saliva, she raised her hand. The winner of today's first match is our new contestant. After a brief moment of silence, the arena instantly erupted into loud cheers as they all eyed the white-haired figure below with glistening eyes. Amazing! What a beautiful match. He's got emperor potential. While this was happening, with his hands behind his back, a demon gazed at the arena from above. After a while, opening his mouth, a deep and powerful voice echoed throughout the space. What information do you have regarding the new contestant? Appearing from behind him was another demon. From the way he carried himself, it was clear that his status was far below the other demons. He was his servant. Taking a knee, he answered. Reporting to your excellency. We do not have a lot of information regarding the newcomer. All we know is that he was brought up by a Viscount-ranked demon. A Viscount-ranked demon? The demon frowned and shook his head. That's hard to believe. Considering his display of power, the likes of a Viscount-ranked demon should not be able to harm him. Is there something else in the report? There is. Say it. In the report, it said that he was found in the outskirts of the city quite heavily injured. It appeared as though he had come out from a fight. That makes more sense. The demon closed his eyes. After a while he addressed his servant. What is his cut? About 10% of the sales of his matches. I see. Opening his eyes again, he coldly ordered, "Have him killed. Don't let others know about his existence." "Understood." The servant quickly disappeared from his spot, and silence descended on the platform. Gazing at the white-haired human from above, the demon smiled. "We might have found our next star."